Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. Grab your coffee or tea or water and sit back and let's talk some astrology for this week. The week of, Monday the 7th through Sunday the 13th, second week of May. And wow, what a week it's going to be. This is one of the quieter weeks of the month, as early in the week things are kind of a mixed bag of energies, but then as we get to the later part of the week, it really begins to ramp up, and we move into that time next week where it gets a little bit crazy. So breathe deep this week. Good morning, Roseanne. Breathe deep this week because things may get a little bit wonky as things get to the latter part of the week. So let's dig in and let's talk about what is going on. We start the week today with the moon in Aquarius. That always ends up kind of giving us that unique sort of outlook, perhaps, or the kind of, out of the box thinking, wondering things that, we don't normally think about, perhaps, or even that off-key sort of energy. Like I woke up this morning and everything's fine, right? Everything's fine, but I just felt like something wasn't quite right. Can't put my finger on it. Nothing happened. Nothing, that would make me feel weird. I was experiencing what I felt like was judgment from other people, even though no one has said a word to me. It was just the weirdest kind of feelings that come up sometimes when the moon is in Aquarius, and it's because it has this different sort of wavelength to it. If you look at the symbol for Aquarius, let's see if I can zoom it in here. This is a chart of the moment, so I can share that. If you look at Aquarius's symbol right here, right there, well, you can't really see it very well, but maybe you guys can, and I just can't see it reflected back to me. But it's waves, like water waves. It's not a water sign, it's an air sign. So what do these waves mean? Well, to me, it looks like frequency waves, right? And frequency waves, they're running right below one another in the symbol, which doesn't imply any kind of discordance in the energy, but it does sometimes disrupt these. If you have energy waves that are coming in vertically and you have then these waves that come across, it can change the dynamic that you're feeling. So good morning, Libby. Yes, my morning was the same. See? Mimi, good morning to you. And Roseanne says, yay, it's Monday. Another week. Yes, another week, except it starts off with a very odd feel to it. Now, I think, the moon is in Aquarius all day. Do I think the feeling will last like that all day? No, I really don't think so, because frequency does one thing, moves, right? And it keeps moving, and different other energies come in and maybe disrupt that wave or change that wave. But it doesn't necessarily make it for a bad day or a good day. It's just, energy waves, right? And it also, to me, looks a little bit like emotions, and emotions can kind of go up and down throughout the day. And of course, a lot of that depends on your human design and how you're designed to feel or deal with emotional energy. And let's see, Roseanne is an Aquarius moon with an Aquarius ascendant. She's good. Yes, she's good. No wonder she's feeling good on this Monday, right? The moon is in her sign. So let's take a look at the week ahead. The moon this week is going to transit through the signs of Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries, slowing down and getting prepared for her new moon phase as we begin next week. And so this is a week where we don't really want to start anything new. This isn't the time. Even though some of you may be in a cycle where you can begin things, this is really in a week of completion. And even the planet Mercury is backing us up there, as he is sitting at the gate 42, which is a gate of completions, right? So whatever projects you have in the works, whatever things that you've been working on, maybe it's an art project, maybe it's a website, maybe it's a relationship. I mean, this doesn't necessarily portend big endings, but there are things that we can complete now. And that's what the energy of this week is about completing the cycle before we get into the next cycle. The energies of the day today are kind of interesting. And it's not interesting bad, not interesting good, just interesting, right? When I say the word interesting, sometimes I think people are going to think I mean bad, but it's not really that. It's that, good morning, Marlene. It's good to see you out there. It's not that it's bad at all, but it is going to give us kind of a weird vent to the day, let's say. So I already said we had the moon in Aquarius, right? Giving us that weird wavelength energy. Today, the moon is trining Venus. And that means a nice, smooth flow. Maybe you and a partner are getting along in a very weird way, in a way you don't normally get along. Maybe money is coming to you in a way that you don't normally think of. Maybe you've been able to turn your life upside down sometime over the weekend and been able to take a look at what you value in your life and rearrange some things that way. Either way you look at it, Moon and Venus, not necessarily a bad thing at all. The moon is squaring the sun today and later in the day, not so much right now this morning, but a little bit later in the day. And that's, remember, our cycle of the moon, where we have the new moon and we have something full of potential, right? And then a week later, we come to the first quarter moon, which is the first square of the sun to the moon, right? Or the moon to the sun in this case, because it moves faster. And that is a crisis of action. It's the first test that you endure of whatever it is that you had intended at the new moon. Does that make sense? So a week after you intend to do something comes the first crisis point. And then we get to the full moon, where we can maybe have a revelation, an epiphany. We can let go of whatever it was that was creating the crisis at this point, and we can move forward. And then on a day like today, we come to the second quarter, or I guess they would call it the fourth quarter moon, third quarter. I'm not sure how they term it, but it doesn't matter. It's the next square, which happens a week before the new moon. And this is the point that's called the crisis of consciousness. It is about whether or not you, having gone through the crisis of action and perhaps had some kind of an aha or an epiphany, or been able to release something or let it go or complete something, now you have to bring more awareness to what it is that you're doing. And a crisis of consciousness can look like, well, I'm in fear around certain things, and I'm going to push through and do it anyway, much like human design would say. You feel the fear and you do it anyway. Bringing more and more consciousness to what it is that you're doing. So that is the point that we're at today. So as we begin to let go of something, or we're, preparing to finish something in order to go through to the new moon, you may come to a point where you have to inject some real consciousness, some real awareness to what it is that you're doing, or what it is that's been holding you back, how it is you've been handling the situation that you find yourself in, and prepare then to be able to move forward with new awareness and new consciousness. And then today, the moon is also squaring Jupiter. Sometimes this is a recipe for us to overdo things. And sometimes it is about really getting clear on where it is that you want to grow and where you want to expand. My daughter yesterday, we had a big family birthday party yesterday. And it was interesting because she said something that just kind of blew me away. She's a Sagittarius, so her natural ruler is the planet Jupiter, an expansive planet, right? And we were all talking about whether we wanted to go on a cruise in January, do some kind of vacation. And she hadn't said anything. So I just looked over at her and asked her, what is she thinking? And is it something that she might want to do? And she says, it's not in my plan right now. I have other goals that I'm working on, and that isn't part of my plan. And I didn't even, I was like without words. I didn't know quite what to say, because it's really interesting to see somebody who's so ruled by Jupiter come into Saturn's territory and really begin to focus energy. And yes, she has a great big plans. She has plans that she really wants to do, but the focus is on those plans and not on creating something that's not in her plan. So when we come to a day like today, we could be very tempted to get outside of the plan, especially with the moon in Aquarius. It's all about coloring outside the lines anyway. So if you have a plan, stick to the plan, right? Don't try to color so far outside the lines that you kind of get lost. You don't want to get lost in Jupiter, the Jupiter growth, right? That growth where we're just like expanding and wow, everything's great. You don't want to do that on a day like today, particularly because the planet Venus, which represents our values and our money, is in a square to Neptune. And Neptune is the planet of spirit, but it's very hard to pin down. You can't really, when you're dealing with Neptune, you can never really express, oh, this is how it's going to work, right? Because there's an element that blurs the lines. It reminds me of a song, Blurred Lines, and that's exactly what's happening here. So if you allow yourself to color too far outside of the lines, especially starting a week where we have a lot of, interesting energies leading to a next week of, kind of disruptive energies. If you get too far out, you may not be able to reel yourself back in. So this is a week to, think expansively perhaps, but be careful that you don't act as expansively as you may be thinking, right? This is a time to wheel it in, focus in a bit. And if growth is necessary, okay, no problem. But just don't, if you need to go this far, don't go this far, right? That's the temptation, is to go this far when you only need to go here. So trying to stay out of extremes of energy, extremes of expression, whether it is you using your voice. And that's important because today, Mercury, the planet of communication, transportation, all kinds of mind issues, is in a square 90-degree challenge to Pluto, right? Pluto in Capricorn, that right now is deconstructing our traditions. It is reconstructing a new paradigm. And as we are moving through this energy today, we may be able to see where our minds, because Mercury's in Aries, it wants new beginnings. It wants to act on all of its great ideas. But if you do that with this Pluto later, you're going to get pulled up short, right? You're going to go, the brakes are going to go on, and it won't be so much fun. And this can be a problem today, too, in your relationships, if without thinking you say things that can be harmful to others. So watch your mouths today, right? Keep your mouths quiet. Let's empower one another today instead of disempowering one another. This is also the week where Mars begins to enter the retrograde zone. And I have one chart this morning that I'm going to do. I haven't heard back from Veva this morning. I thought I had her birth information. So Veva, if you're listening in the behind the scenes, I thought I had your birth information and I do not. So if you're listening, you can private message me on Facebook, or right here in the chat, and I can get your chart done. Libby, I have your chart, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit here. So Mars begins to enter the RX zone on the 12th, which is Saturday. And I found my piece of paper, guys, my piece of paper with my little cheat notes on it that I couldn't find yesterday and the day before and the day before that. And the day before that even. I had dropped it on the floor and it was under my desk, just out of sight. So I found it this morning because I dropped my pen and I had to go pick up my pen and I went, oh, there's my paper. So Mars enters the retrograde zone at 20 to retrograde, like it's spinning, spinning, spinning. Then we stop. That's not quite how it works. And by the way, the planet doesn't stop spinning. That is not what I was inferring. But the planet appears to be slowing down as it's moving through the sky. And it slows down to its retrograde station on June 26th at 9 degrees of Aquarius, right? So it's moved just about 10 or 11 degrees before it stops and starts to appear to move backwards through the sky, backwards from 9 degrees Aquarius to 28 degrees of Capricorn. So that's the degree span that we've been looking at in people's charts, because this is where the action is effectively slowing down, and then we'll come to sort of a halt, and then we'll turn inward, right? So we've been looking at that degree, that span. On August 27th, Mars will turn back to direct motion at 28 degrees of Capricorn, and it will leave its retrograde span on October 8th. And that'll again be at 9 degrees Aquarius. And then we're done with the Mars cycle for another 2 years, right? So if this is an extended period of time, it doesn't mean that all action comes to a stop. but it does mean that we'll have to really deal with a little bit of slow down in our forward momentum and our forward energy. Things may not feel as dynamic. Might be a really good time to take a vacation this summer, right? You know, that's more favored than working on something, right? Or beginning a new business or things like that. So people, if you're thinking of doing something new, please reach out and get your chart done by me or anybody else before you start something new, because timing is going to be important as we move forward from here. Then on Sunday, it'll be Mother's Day. And that will be the day that Mercury conjuncts Uranus. And we know then that is the trigger, right? There's a trigger point that begins to really shift the energy for us as Uranus prepares to move into Taurus next week. So it should be an interesting week. This week won't be as quiet maybe as last week. And some of you may say it wasn't quiet last week, but lots of internal maybe things, turmoil going on the inner planes. But I wanted to share something with you important from the human design perspective this week. I just started sort of penciling in free thinking kind of things about, and I shouldn't do that. I'm a Gemini, right? My mind just gets carried away. But I was thinking about the energies that we enter the week with. And you know, the human design week isn't just Monday through Friday or Monday through Sunday, like our calendar week. It moves differently. So for example, we are in the week, last week began on the 4th, which was Friday, and it changes on the 10th. We move into a new set of gates for the week. So it has a different frequency to it, right? It has an Aquarian frequency to it. If you think about it, it moves in this, predictable pattern, but it doesn't move in the mechanical way that our calendar works. So it's a completely different beast, if you will. And remember, we talked about it being in the gate 2, the sun at gate 2 and the earth at gate 1, which was about being receptive, open to receiving. I saw an interesting meme that came through from Richard Rudd, who does the Gene Keys. And it was the picture of a very pregnant woman, and his kind of relation to gate 2, the sun at gate 2, was being pregnant with something, right? Being ready to bring forth something creative and something wonderful and something beautiful, a new birth coming, right? And that was interesting because gate 1, the earth, is the gate of self-expression. So we have a really good anchoring energy for the week, which is receptivity and self-expression. Now, as I started moving across the column, I wanted to, let me show you, where's my book? So here's what the grid looks like. So you see May right there, and across the top are the different planets. Let me see if I bring it in just a little bit closer and move it this way. There we go. So you see those planets across the top. The symbols are the symbols for planets. And then what you're seeing then is down the column here, over here, God bless me. There are all the dates for the month. And then as it goes across, it tells us what gate each of the energies are at. And of course, the moon is way over here because she can move 3 gates in a week easily. She's actually, this week, gate-wise, the moon is moving through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. She moves about 2 gates a day. Wow. Right? The moon is definitely moving much faster than the other planets. So yeah, if you understand how human design works, and some of you that have been coaching with me might really understand this. I get this on a website that's called Zen. No, that's not what it's called. It's called Zen Human Design, but the website is humandesignsystem.com. Humandesignsystem.com. And it's just called a pocket ephemeris. And it gives you what the planets are all doing for the whole of the year in your human design. I wouldn't recommend it for you if you're not really if you're not really aware of what your own human design is. I think it's just a bunch of information that would really confuse you. But anybody who does get it, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to help you understand what that means. So we have the sun and the earth moving through receptivity and self-expression. We have Mercury at the gate of completions. And what it's Mercury at the gate of completions is meaning we're taking our mind perhaps and we're moving it through to something that leads us into some form of letting go or some form of completion. And then we have Venus. Now she's in two different gates this week. She's at gate 35, which is the gate of sort of the jack of all trades, the Jill of all trades, someone who has a lot of different skills. What do we call those? The MacGyvers, right? Of the world. Some of you might be too young to remember MacGyver, but it was a great show. Oh, I think there's a new rendition of MacGyver. And so he's a younger guy now, and he's doing all of these different things. He has all these different skills. He can do anything with duct tape, kind of like my husband who can do anything with duct tape. And so the gate 35 with Venus means that we may have a lot of varying things going on, or abilities. But she moves into a money gate as we get into Wednesday of this week, the 9th. And it's gate 45. It's the gate of receiving money. It's the gate of having money and dealing with money from the standpoint of the king or the queen. We call that gate the gate of the king or the queen, because it's an energy where we have this pool of money and we really feel entitled to spend it. But if you look at it from the standpoint of what does Venus represent, she represents money. She represents values and resources. So to me, Venus being at gate 45 this week sort of backs up the fact that we can, if we move in toward what it is we value, and if we use our dollars toward what we value, then we end up being able to use this energy very wisely. And then here's the more Debbie Downer energy of the week, perhaps, but that's from my perspective because my own Saturn sits at this gate and it's not a fun gate. At least not for me. And that is for the next few weeks until we get to May 19th. That's actually what, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks? Mars, as he begins to move into retrograde station, into that territory, moves into the gate 60, which is the gate of limitation. And it's the gate that when so in the gene keys, remember how it's from the shadow to the gift to the siddhi. Well, the shadow is limitation. The gift is realism, and the siddhi is justice. So it is going to be, I think, on the outer world, right? This beginning of this Mars retrograde period, or the shadow period, is going to be really interesting for our outer world, as some people out there, and you know who they might be, get their comeuppances. And it could be a lot of different things out there, right, that get their comeuppance, because the highest expression is justice. But in the middle ground, it's realism. And in the shadow, which most of the expression of the outer world seems to be in the shadow, it's going to be about being limited, right? Somebody's limiting someone's powers. Somebody's engaged in too limiting of thinking. And because this is going to be a highly energetic period of time, it'll be interesting to see what goes on in the outer world. I want to think about Uranus also moving into a new sign, right in the midst of Mars being at that particular house gate. And that makes me think of limited finances. So even though Venus might be at a gate where we're receiving money, let's maybe be real careful about what we do with that money, right? Maybe put some away for a rainy day, so that if indeed the financial markets begin to wobble as we see the change of Uranus into that sign, you're not scared, right? You don't feed into the fear and the frenzy of what's happening in that outer world. So interesting times ahead, people. I'm actually, can I say this? I'm actually kind of excited to see what comes of this, because I really feel like there's a real inner dynamic shift that's potentially here, but also the outer world showing us some shifting as well. And I almost just want to, do this and see like, ooh, what magical things are going to happen. I know there are going to be things that are going to piss us off too. I think that goes without saying when we're dealing with the outer world. So again, keep, maybe focused toward yourself, be aware of what's happening in the outer world, And isn't it interesting? Remember, Taurus is an earth sign, and Uranus is moving into Taurus. And we're already seeing some huge disruptions with volcanoes and earthquakes going on. Poor Hawaii. I mean, they had the deluge with the flooding. I can't remember what island that was. And now the Big Island is going through a lot of volcanic issues. Huge earthquake the other day, 6.9. Craziness, right? And there may be some more disruption in the Earth's crust and mantle being exploded through volcanoes, and maybe more Earth disruption. Don't panic. It is just the Earth also going through what we people go through, and that is shifting and changing. Fun stuff, right? Now, I am going to do a quick reading for Libby, our little Libby friend out there. And anybody who has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And then I did put my cards here. I didn't pull them yet, so it'll be interesting to see, because I think we need to pull a card for what is the energy, what we can expect from the energy for the week. So I'm just getting them ready so I can do that. Okay, so Libby, darling, how are you this morning? First of all, as I look through people's charts, it always happens this way. It always happens this way, where something jumps out at me, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring things up, Libby, from your chart that jumped out at me, right? That would be me not being a good astrologer. So I wanted to take a look at your second house, which is the house of money, self-worth, and value. And Libby, just can you tell me really quickly, do you mind if I show your chart on the screen at all? Because I don't want to show your chart and then, get you upset with me, because I don't really know you very well. But you have a dynamic going on in your chart where you have a lot of planets kind of focused in one quarter of the chart. And in fact, it's the first house, second house, and third house. Literally, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, even if I count the one just over in the 12th house, things in those three houses. So it's a very jam-packed part of your chart. Lots going on in this lifetime for you around self-expression, being yourself, transforming yourself, self-acceptance, self-love, self-worth, lots of selves that we could go through with you based on just your natal chart, the birth chart. And then we also have some communication and some mind issues going on, whether that was learning disabilities when you were a youth, whether you still find that you somehow maybe you evaluate yourself as not being as smart as other people, or maybe you're brilliant, but you find it hard to express that in the world. Somehow, these are all of the energies in your chart that are being sort of subjected to Jupiter at this moment in time. And that just jumped out at me, because now you're not answering me as to whether I can show you the chart, but if you want to look at your own chart, it is the part on the lower left quadrant of the chart. It's, you can't miss it, because it's all right there. And all of that energy, all the tension of that quarter of the chart is being held by Chiron. So remember, we've been talking about people, how the charts have been sort of like a bucket lately. The transit charts, which are kind of not that way as much anymore, have been looking like a handle up here with a planet or two up here, but the rest of them down at the bottom. Well, Libby, this is exactly what's going on in your chart. So she says I can show you this information. So let's see if I can do this without knocking my microphone off. So if you look, you see this part of her chart down here. Where's my pen? This is all huge in terms of what's being affected. Opposite side over here, the only planet opposing all of that energy is Chiron, and it's in Taurus. She has Chiron in Taurus. Who's going into Taurus? Right? Uranus. And we have Jupiter right down here. You can't hardly see her because I'm being a dork here with the chart. There it is, Jupiter. So Jupiter is all at once growing, expanding, but she's retrograde right now. So there's a lot going on in the inner planes, and she's in your second house of money. And it's interesting because in astrology, the second house is the house of self-worth, confidence, and self-esteem, but also money that you earn. And I always wondered, how is it that they put money in with self-worth, right? But if you think about it, when you go out into the world to take a job or to earn money, there are people out there that seem to earn more money than other people doing the same job, right? Apples and apples, right? So someone can go into a job and say, I want X dollars an hour, and it's at the top of the market's, scale for that job. And others go in and settle for whatever it is that the person that's hiring you is going to offer you, right? So that is someone down here that doesn't maybe have as much self-worth versus this other person that says, I know my value, right? And if $20 is the high of the scale, $20 per hour, I'm going to ask for that $20 and then, come down a little bit maybe. But the other person says the low end of the scale is maybe $14 an hour, and I'll be happy with $14 an hour. You just, and there's nothing wrong with that. Literally, there is nothing wrong with that unless it's you settling for less because you feel not as good, not as worthy, not as accepting of yourself, where you don't really know your own value. I didn't get a chance to look at your human design chart, Libby, and I'll probably pull that for you at some other point, because this is so, so important. Jupiter is moving backwards through here. Now, to me, that means you've already had to deal with this, right? This has already been in your picture. And now you have an opportunity in your inner world to heal this energy, right? To work with that, to empower yourself more, to bring more value, to allow yourself to see who you really are and see your value, your worth in a different perspective. And of course, right now, Jupiter is at, what is she at? She's at 18 degrees of Scorpio. Your Chiron is at 22 degrees of Chiron, right across the chart. And that brings up a pain, a wound. There's something going on here that needs to be transformed. And your Chiron is sitting in the 8th house, which sometimes brings up abuses from the past, whether it was sexual abuse, emotional, physical, spiritual abuse. All kinds of different things could have perhaps happened to you in your younger years that maybe set you up for having a values problem, a worth problem. So right now is a great time for you to get through all of that. Now, your Mars retrograde, because that was the whole purpose, but I'm sorry, the other one jumped out at me. The Mars retrograde area of your chart is going to be across the home family dynamic and the creative expression of joy, love, romance, etc. Now, when I was on your Facebook page, I noticed that your cover is a picture of your wedding, or you as a bride, and but I couldn't see the faces, so I don't know. I'm sure it was you that was getting married, hopefully here. And I'm not, anyway, so I wanted to ask, how is your marriage? Because Mars rules Aries, and Aries for you is on the house of marriage. And Chiron is just entered, Chiron by transit, just entered that 7th house of marriage. So there may be some issues being triggered for you. Maybe they're old things from, times when you were a kid or when you were a teenager, and it is playing out in the dynamic perhaps between you and a spouse. If not, it's maybe playing out between you and a business partner, but somehow, and this isn't just like one day this happens and then it's, gone. Nope. Chiron is here for the next 6.5 years or so, playing out a healing of the dynamic that was created probably in your youth. So that can make for some rocky times in a marriage, right? It can make for some really good times if you have a really understanding spouse who's really willing to go with you into these darker places. And when you're willing to do this, what the Mars energy brings to you at this point, first of all, I wanted to find out, are you selling a house, buying a house, moving? What's going on at home? Right now it's a little hard, she says, because Mars, and if you're trying to sell a house right now, or if you're looking to buy a house, or you're looking to do a project that redesigns your house or something like that, be very careful, because Mars is turning retrograde in that part of your chart where it may slow down the process of of buying and selling property, of being able to do the projects that you want to do. It is also spilling over into the house of children. I don't know if you have children, but if you do, this might be a great time to reestablish joy in your life, right? Make joy a priority. The joy that comes from being creative, you did just move. Hallelujah. Timing's perfect then. So now what you're in the process of, I'm assuming, is making the house your own, right? Maybe unpacking or painting or doing things like that. Perfect indication for things that you can do right now to organize, to put things together, to really, make it your home, and then create joy from that space. So there's a lot of restructuring going on here. And there may be times where you have to, I don't know, did you move from a bigger house to a smaller house, or from a smaller to a bigger, and now you have to fill that space? She says, yes, she has 3 boys. So you're a busy woman. And so there's so make joy a factor here. Make joy put the emphasis on creating joy in your life. And even when things are hard, making sure that that's the energy that you remember that forms the foundation of all of us as humans is joy. Joy is not an emotion. It is a foundational energy. It's the foundation of who we are. So mostly, I think you probably will have an easier Mars retrograde time. I'm not looking at any big upsets there, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other things going on because of the Jupiter Chiron dynamic in your chart. So if you need more, you can certainly reach out and get a hold of me, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Thank you, everybody, for listening, because there's probably others of you that were born. She was born in 1981. September of 81. So that was a time where Chiron happened to be in Taurus. So you all are looking at not your Chiron returns yet by any stretch of the imagination, but Uranus in Taurus may be bringing you some surprising things about yourselves in those next years. So it's kind of an exciting time, but it might be a little bit disturbing as well. And disturbance is good, right? Because out of disturbance comes growth. Out of disturbance comes, whoa, that's not me anymore. I'm letting that go. So interesting to see that. All right. I just want to say one more thing to you, Libby, because your Chiron, even though it's sitting in the 8th house, is right at the cusp of the 9th house. It's almost like one of the ways that you can grow or heal is by growing. And I know that seems sort of like a no-brainer, but healing in this case for you personally is really related to how expansive you can become. So if you're looking in the mirror and you're seeing a very limited reflection of who you are, I'm going to encourage you to get a bigger picture of who you are. Right? Get a bigger picture of who you are, because maybe you've limited yourself to a very small picture frame, and I want you to make it 16 by 20 instead of the little, 4 by 6. Does that make sense? So maybe that's the way that you move through healing in the next few years, is by working with a bigger picture of who you are. All right. Yay. All right. So let's do a card for the week, people. I'm not even sure how many minutes I've spent here, but I realized last week that a couple of our videos went almost an hour long. The one with Angie was like 58 minutes. My intention was to keep these to about 20 to 30 minutes so that everybody could get on with their day. But sometimes, you just got to go with what's got to be said. And right now I am trying to pull a card for us about the week ahead. What do we need to know to get through this week? Aye. And they're being, happy, happy, happy. Love this card. She's at a party. She's got balloons. I don't know that we've ever had this. Well, this is interesting too, because she's standing on a lock where you can very clearly see the keyhole. There are balloons, fairy wings, but unfortunately she was upside down, or maybe fortunately she was upside down. So she's in protection mode. And let's take a look here. What number is she? 26, the number of humanity. So happy, happy, the essential meaning. By the way, I'm using the Wisdom of the Oracle by Colette Baron Reid. Love these cards. Joy and contentment, a sense of fulfillment and a feeling that all is well. And in protection mode, it is lighten up, because this is the time to be ridiculous and silly. See the world through the eyes of a clown and don't take yourself or any situation right now too seriously. Have fun, be playful, and make laughter the order of the day. You'll be surprised by how everything just seems to fall into place when humor leads the way. Being happy and lighthearted is a wonderful icebreaker. Life is meant for play as well as work, for laughter as well as tears, for celebration as well as focus. Spirit wants to sparkle through you today. Actually, this was the week, so Spirit wants to sparkle through you this week. Smile and enjoy each breath and each moment. Miracles lie in the silly things today and this week. Love it. So don't get too caught up in the seriousness of whatever it is that happens, either to you, to someone in your family, to the outer world, or in the outer world. Being able to remember, this really validates what I said about joy. It's a foundational energy, right? It isn't an emotion that goes up and down. It forms our foundation. And yes, we may have disturbing things that happen, but it's a part of our experience here on this planet. It's a part of our living, loving, growing, and part of our humanity. So I like that. The keyhole reminds me of Chiron, right? Chiron is, if you look at the symbol for Chiron, it looks like a K. So people always think, oh, it's a K for Chiron, even though Chiron, I spell it with a CH, but some people spell it with a K. But it's on its side, it's a key. And it's the key that unlocks the part of you that's tied up in the wound and shows you the way to open the door to your healing. So it's an interesting symbol, I think, that she has the key to be happy right here. Ha, ha, ha. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me this morning. And it is hopefully going to be a beautiful day. It feels like the sun is about ready to break out. And maybe that means I'm going to spend some more time in the garden today. I don't know. We shall see. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Make it a wonderful day. Love to all of you. We'll see you tomorrow morning. And Libby, don't forget, if you have more questions, you can feel free to message me on Facebook. All right. Bye for now. See you all tomorrow morning.